A school bully attacks a black girl, not knowing she's a brutal fighter. Every hallway has its story, whispered secrets clinging to lockers scrawled across bathroom stalls or carried in guarded gazes between students. At Crescent Ridge High School, one conflict boiled beneath the surface, waiting to explode in the most unexpected way. A popular bully felt invincible, ruling with cutting words and menacing stares. He had no idea his next target, a quiet black girl who mostly kept to herself, possessed a hidden strength. In the chaos that followed, no one would remain unchanged. From disbelief to shock, and then to an unforgettable reckoning, this story would become the talk of the entire school and beyond. Crescent Ridge High School in Atlanta. Georgia appeared at first glance like any other American high school, with its wide lawns, tall gates, and the iconic signboard out front that read, "Home of the Crescent Ridge Falcons." The campus exuded pride. Students wearing Letterman jackets roamed the grounds, eager for the weekend football game. Teachers carried stacks of assignments, calling out reminders about due dates and after-school activities. Birds nested in the thick oak trees near the parking lot, chirping loudly every morning. An oddly pleasant soundtrack to the everyday drama that played out beneath their branches. Among these halls, a group of students thrived on the chaos of teenage life. Dominating that group was Todd Whitfield, a junior who had somehow made it his mission to keep everyone else in check. He was tall and well-built for his age, with sharp blue eyes that could zero in on any unsuspecting target. If Todd set his sights on you, it was only a matter of time before you felt his wrath. Whether that arrived in the form of snarky jokes, insults, or sometimes more physical forms of intimidation. He wore the Crescent Ridge Falcons varsity jacket every single day. Some whispered that Todd's father, a well-known alumnus, had practically paid for the new wing of the school's gym. Todd kept that rumor afloat, proud that his family name carried weight among the staff and principal. Perhaps that was why, whenever he crossed the line, teachers gave him gentle reprimands instead of real consequences. Across the cafeteria, sitting quietly and reading a copy of Becoming by Michelle Obama, was Denise Morgan. Denise had only transferred to Crescent Ridge High School a couple of months ago, but she already had a reputation as someone you didn't want to mess with. It wasn't because of any rumors of her fighting, nor any demonstration of toughness. It was a different kind of atmosphere she carried, collected razor-sharp and unbothered by the typical teenage hierarchy. She was calm in the face of petty insults, once shrugging off a nasty remark about her hair with a mere roll of her eyes. Denise was a tall, lean black girl, with a posture that suggested unwavering self-possession. She dressed simply, favoring comfortable jeans and t-shirts. Most of her ensemble had the discreet Nike swoosh, though she never bragged about her style or turned heads with flamboyant outfits. She was, for the most part, a mystery, a calm presence in a school that thrived on noise. Todd, however, thrived on challenges. He noticed Denise's aloof demeanor and disliked how unaffected she was by his antics. She didn't cower. She didn't humor him. She didn't feed his ego. Over time, the frustration ballooned inside him. He began to see her as a target that needed conquering. One autumn afternoon, as the crisp wind whipped across the track field, Todd surveyed the campus from the top of the bleachers. His friends, a ragtag group of sycophants, sat around him, discussing typical teenage gossip. Todd's gaze zeroed in on Denise as she crossed the field, heading from the library to the parking lot. She was alone, earphones plugged in. He felt a desire to knock her off that pedestal of self-containment. At the time, he didn't know how, but he swore he'd find a way. What Todd couldn't realize, was that some people were more layered than they seemed. Denise had a personal history etched into her bones, a story of resilience that shaped her calm exterior. Deep down, she carried experiences that had forced her to learn how to defend herself. She'd faced more than name-calling in her life. Real adversity had shown her how to fight and how to fight well. In the coming days, an unstoppable force would collide with an immovable object. The spark was about to ignite in the cafeteria, the hallways, and eventually beyond, in front of an audience that would talk about it for years. While Todd believed he was invincible, the storm he was about to unleash would rock him to his core. Students would watch in awe, uncertain whether to cheer or cower. And when the dust settled, the balance of power within Crescent Ridge High School would shift forever. The school day began like any other. Students trudged in with backpacks slung over their shoulders, yawning and complaining about pop quizzes. Teachers scrawled warm-up exercises on whiteboards, their coffee cups half empty on their desks. The cafeteria buzzed with chatter, the smell of toasted bagels and fresh fruit drifting through the air. Denise found her usual corner table near the large windows that overlooked the school courtyard. She liked the sunlight that pooled there, the way it lit up her pages when she studied. That morning, she was reviewing a biology chapter on genetics. Her expression was serene, as if the noise around her were no more significant than the humming of an air conditioner. A sudden hush fell over one side of the cafeteria. It wasn't the entire crowd, just a localized ripple, as though a small social tremor had passed through. Todd strolled in, carrying a tray of food, flanked by two of his ever-present minions, Caleb and Wyatt. Students parted like the Red Sea when Todd walked by, not necessarily out of respect, but out of self-preservation. No one wanted to be the next target. He noticed Denise at her table alone, as usual. A passing flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Who did she think she was reading, like she didn't have a care in the world? He set his tray down at a nearby table, not even glancing at the group of freshmen who were already seated there. They scattered, grabbing their trays and scurrying away, relieved to avoid confrontation. Todd plucked a napkin from his tray and made an exaggerated show of wiping his hands. "Hey, new girl," he called over loud enough for people in the general vicinity to hear. Denise looked up with a calm gaze. She paused, her music removing her earbuds. "Yes," he smirked. "You're in my seat." It was an absurd claim. Everyone knew Denise had been sitting there for weeks. She glanced around, noticing the half-dozen other tables that were vacant. "I don't see your name on it." The drama-seeking hush widened. A few students turned to watch, nibbling on their breakfasts or sipping juice cartons. They anticipated Todd's response, and some even dared to hope for an entertaining exchange. Todd stared at her, as though he couldn't believe she had the gall to talk back. "Guess you're new enough not to know how things work around here," Todd said, leaning forward. "This is where I usually sit. So why don't you move?" She shut her book, exhaling slowly. "There are plenty of seats. Take your pick." For a moment, Todd said nothing. A current of tension spread through the air. Caleb and Wyatt glanced at each other, uncertain if Todd was about to pounce, or if this was just another routine attempt at bullying that would fizzle out with a few insults. Todd leaned in closer. "You really want to play this game with me? New girl." Denise wasn't sure why she decided not to budge this time, but something inside her rebelled against giving in. Maybe it was that look in his eyes, the sense of entitlement, the assumption that she would fold just because he wanted her to. She locked eyes with him, unwavering. "I'm not playing any game. I'm just sitting." His jaw twitched. He was used to easy victories. When he bullied a kid, they usually laughed nervously, apologized, or moved out of the way. This was not going according to plan. Before he could say anything else, Mr. Patel, the cafeteria supervisor, noticed the tension. "Todd, is there a problem?" he asked, stepping forward with a stern expression. Todd gritted his teeth. "No problem here," he replied through a forced smile. He shot Denise a final glare, then grabbed his tray. "Let's go, guys," he told Caleb and Wyatt. The three of them sauntered away, eventually settling on another table, though Todd's eyes kept flicking back to Denise's corner. As the onlookers returned to their own lives, the show was over. But Todd's pride had taken a hit, and Denise could sense the animosity rolling off him in waves. She'd drawn a line in the sand by refusing to move. At the time, she didn't realize how fixated Todd would become on making her pay for that defiance. By the end of the day, a new rumor started circulating. People whispered that Todd, after a humiliating morning, was planning something big. For Todd, it was never enough to glare and grumble. He preferred demonstrations, displays of power that proved he was still the king of these halls. Meanwhile, Denise continued her routine as usual, ignoring the stares. She took solace in her books and the knowledge that after classes ended, she had a place to go where she could channel her energy in a more productive way. She would stop by Master Shu's martial arts academy, one of the top-rated dojos in the Atlanta area, where she had been training for the past month. No one knew this detail about Denise. Not the teachers, not her classmates, certainly not Todd. She kept her extracurricular life private, preferring not to wave it around like a banner. It was her sanctuary, a place where she built her confidence through discipline and focus. If Todd had known, maybe he would have been more cautious about crossing her. But ignorance can be a bully's best friend, and Todd planned to use his ignorance in the most reckless way possible. Denise discovered Master Shu's martial arts academy shortly after moving to Atlanta from her old hometown in Chicago. She had been looking for a place to continue the training. She started years ago. She had dabbled in various martial arts styles, from a young age from Taekwondo to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It wasn't just about combat. It was about self-control and confidence. Master Shu was a wiry man in his late 50s, but he moved with the grace and power of someone half his age. He rarely raised his voice, yet commanded respect from everyone who entered the dojo. On the day Denise first walked in, wearing a t-shirt and track pants, she'd felt an instant connection to the peaceful yet rigorous atmosphere. Master Shu saw potential in her. She adapted quickly to new techniques, and her discipline stood out. After each class, he'd pull her aside for extra drills, reminding her that true strength came from within. Over time, Denise's confidence grew. Not the arrogant swagger of someone who felt unbeatable, but a calm assurance that she could handle whatever life threw at her. She needed that assurance in a place like Crescent Ridge High, where Todd's brand of tyranny went mostly unchecked. After her encounter with him in the cafeteria, the best therapy she could have asked for was a few hours at the dojo. That evening, she ran through her usual routines, punches, kicks, grapples, and ended with a lengthy sparring session with a more advanced student. She won the bout, though both she and her partner came away panting and exhausted. When the match ended, Master Shu approached, handing her a towel. "Your form is improving," he said. "But remember, controlling your power is just as important as unleashing it." She nodded, mopping her forehead. "I know. Sometimes it's hard to find the right balance." He gave a small smile. "In life you will meet forces that provoke you. The true test of strength is knowing how to respond, when to engage, and when to let go." Denise understood that, at least on an intellectual level. Emotionally, she was unsettled. Todd's intimidation lingered in her mind. not because she feared him, but because she sensed their conflict was far from over. The last thing she wanted was to create a spectacle at school, but she also wouldn't allow herself to be his stepping stone. By the time Denise reached home that night, she was exhausted. Her mother, Regina Morgan, was in the kitchen watching the local news on television while preparing dinner. Denise dropped her duffel bag by the door and slumped into a chair, the smell of fried chicken making her stomach rumble. Regina glanced over. "Rough day at school?" she asked. Denise shrugged. Just the usual teenage drama. Nothing too major. Her mother knew better than to pry without invitation. "Well, dinner's almost ready. You want to set the table?" Denise stood heading to the cabinet for plates and cutlery. She remembered how her mother had worked hard to move them to Atlanta after losing her job in Chicago. Regina found new employment here, an administrative position at a local hospital. Denise had promised herself she wouldn't add to her mother's burden, so she kept quiet about Todd. She would handle him on her own. The next few days at school passed with an undercurrent of tension. Todd's clique was more active, whispering and pointing. Denise felt their eyes on her whenever she crossed the hallway or sat in the library. It was like being in the calm center of a gathering storm. She braced herself, but she also refused to alter her path. She would still do her homework in her favorite spot, still walk with her head high. A few incidents hinted at Todd's attempts to provoke her. A piece of gum stuck to her locker handle, a scribble of "loser" on her desk. She didn't take the bait. She scraped off the gum, ignored the graffiti. That's what Todd found most frustrating, her unflappable disposition. His intimidation campaign wasn't yielding the results he craved. All the while, Todd's frustration brewed into a darker plan. He had confided in Caleb and Wyatt, who had reservations about going too far, but Todd waved them off, claiming that someone like Denise needed a grand demonstration, something that would humiliate her in front of everyone. Finally, the opportunity arrived during an afternoon pep rally for the upcoming football game. The entire school gathered in the gymnasium, where cheerleaders performed routines. The marching band played rousing tunes, and the football team took center stage for a pre-game ceremony. Todd was not on the football team, but he rode the wave of popularity simply by being around them. He positioned himself at the top row of the bleachers, scanning for Denise. She was in the lower rows, talking quietly with one of her classmates. He watched her with narrowed eyes, waiting for the perfect moment. Principal Jefferson took the microphone, addressing the raucous crowd. "Let's give it up for our Crescent Ridge Falcons." The band played, the crowd cheered, and Todd slipped down a few rows. He nudged Wyatt, who carried a small plastic bag filled with a suspicious substance, flour dyed with red food coloring. The idea was Todd's to dump it on Denise to create a humiliating spectacle. It would look like a bloody mess, turning heads and eliciting laughter. As the principal droned on about school spirit, Todd crept closer behind Denise, holding the bag with trembling excitement. Wyatt and Caleb stood watch, making sure no teacher's eyes were on them. The plan was to empty the colored flour, then slip away in the ensuing chaos. At that moment, the band finished their number with a final drum roll. Todd took the opportunity, ripping open the bag and tilting it over Denise's head. In a swift motion, a cascade of red powder rained down, only for Denise to spin around with almost inhuman reflexes. She'd sensed the movement behind her, that slight shift of air that spelled trouble. She kicked Todd's wrist, causing him to fumble the bag. It slipped from his grasp, the red flour exploding mid-air, coating Todd's chest instead of Denise's. Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd. Laughter broke out from various corners, and the principal, startled by the noise, looked over to see Todd covered in red dust. Todd's face turned crimson, both from the color and from raw fury. Denise stood there, heart pounding. She hadn't meant to ruin the rally, but she also refused to be Todd's victim. He lunged at her, shoving her shoulder roughly. She stumbled back but maintained her balance. A teacher spotted them. "Break it up!" she yelled, rushing toward them. Todd glared at Denise, his eyes practically glowing with malice. She held her ground fists clenched at her sides, trying to stay calm. The teacher came between them, sternly ordering them to report to the principal's office. In that moment, Todd's humiliation was complete, or so everyone thought. But as he stood there, covered in red flour, the seeds of vengeance sank even deeper. He wanted payback, and he wanted it to be undeniable, unstoppable. The small confrontation was nothing compared to the plan forming in his mind now. Denise, for her part, walked to the principal's office with her heart pounding. She knew the trouble that lay ahead. They would both probably receive some punishment, though Todd's plan had obviously backfired. She worried not for herself, but for the inevitability of Todd's next move. She had humiliated him in front of the entire school, something a bully like Todd would never forgive. In the aftermath of the pep rally fiasco, Principal Jefferson demanded an explanation. Todd, trying to salvage his pride, spun a convoluted tale about a prank that went wrong. Denise, ever composed, simply recounted the truth. However, in the interest of avoiding further scandal, the principal gave them both a warning and 2 weeks of after-school detention. It felt unfair to Denise, but she decided not to protest. No good would come from arguing, especially when Todd's father was an influential alumnus. Detention was held in a cramped classroom near the art studios. An old computer clacked in the corner, and the walls were plastered with posters about discipline and respect. Each afternoon, Todd and Denise sat 3 rows apart, silently copying lines from a school policy handbook. The tension in that room was so thick it could have been carved with a knife. One day, about a week into their detention sentence, Todd slipped a note to Denise across the desk when the teacher stepped out. The paper read, "You're not so tough. Watch your back." Denise read it, crumpled it up, and tossed it in the trash without acknowledging Todd. She knew his type. He thrived on fear and a reaction. She refused to give him either. That only fueled his anger. His eyes followed her with calculating malice, as though he were waiting for a chance to corner her. Outside of detention, the entire school was abuzz about the pep rally incident. Some students admired Denise's composure. Others warned that Todd had it out for her now more than ever. Rumors circulated that Todd was waiting for the perfect moment to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. Meanwhile, life carried on. Teachers assigned tests, the cafeteria served its usual fare, and the varsity football team prepared for the homecoming game. Denise continued her martial arts training, focusing on grapples and sikpiuit. She told herself it was just part of her regimen, but deep down she suspected she might need those skills sooner rather than later. A few days later, the tension burst into the open once more. It was the final bell and students hurried to their buses or cars. Denise walked alone, carrying a heavy stack of textbooks for the weekend's homework. She passed through a deserted corridor on her way to detention when Todd appeared from behind a row of lockers. Caleb and Wyatt flanked him like loyal guards. "Well, well," Todd sneered. "If it isn't Crescent Ridge's brand-new vigilante." Denise glanced around. No teachers, no other students. She stood tall, careful not to show fear. "What do you want?" He smirked. "You don't belong here, you know. Acting like you're better than everyone else." "I've never acted that way," she said calmly. You're the one who's constantly pushing people around. Todd's face twisted. Because I can. And no one stops me. Denise shifted her weight, balancing the books in her arms. She felt adrenaline pulsing in her veins. Todd eyed her, perhaps looking for a hint of panic. None came. "Why don't you just leave me alone?" Denise asked. He took a step forward, fists tightening. "Because you embarrassed me in front of the whole school. Now you're gonna pay for that." Caleb and Wyatt, though less enthusiastic about Todd's vendetta, closed in. Denise placed her textbooks on the floor, with deliberate slowness, never taking her eyes off them. She knew the dynamic. Todd was the alpha the others followed. If Todd started a fight, they might jump in. Todd lunged first, but it was a telegraphed move. He swung a wide punch, fueled more by anger than technique. Denise sidestepped smoothly, hooking an arm around his outstretched fist and guiding him forward. He stumbled, nearly losing his balance. The look on his face was stunned confusion. He hadn't expected her to dodge so easily. Caleb moved next, trying to grab her by the shoulders. She ducked and twisted, using her momentum to throw him off balance. His shoulder hit the locker with a clang, and he winced in pain. Wyatt hesitated, unsure if he wanted to join the fray. Meanwhile, Todd recovered his face, a mask of fury. They circled each other in the narrow hallway. Denise's stance was textbook martial arts. Knees slightly bent, arms raised, eyes focused. Todd attacked again, more cautious this time. He tried for a low tackle, aiming to slam her into the lockers. Denise lowered her center of gravity, hooking her arm under his torso. With a practiced pivot, she used his own momentum to toss him aside. Todd landed on the floor with a thud that echoed in the stillness of the corridor. Caleb finally regained his courage. He lunged, but Denise blocked his punch, countering with a swift tap to his chest. She didn't want to seriously hurt anyone, just defend herself. Wyatt hovered, looking more and more like he wished he were anywhere else. Todd scrambled to his feet, panting. Rage contorted his features. "You're going to regret this," he spat, then motioned to Caleb and Wyatt. "Let's go." They left as quickly as they had appeared, shoving past the lockers. Denise stood there, heart pounding from the surge of adrenaline. She knew this was far from over, but she'd proven she wasn't an easy target. Collecting her books, she hurried to detention before anyone else could see or stop her. Her mind raced. She'd avoided real damage, but Todd's ego was now irreparably bruised. There was no telling how far he would go to restore his reputation. That night, Denise tried to focus on homework, but her thoughts kept returning to the hallway confrontation. She could still feel the tense energy the moment Todd lunged with clenched fists. In her old neighborhood in Chicago, she'd seen street scuffles and had even been cornered a few times. Her father had left when she was young, so she and her mother learned to navigate life's hazards alone. Perhaps that was where her inner resolve had first been forged. After dinner, Denise talked with her mother, who sensed her daughter's unease. Still, Denise withheld the details of what happened at school. She didn't want to worry her. Later, she locked herself in her room and attempted a short meditation. A practice Master Shu recommended to quiet a restless mind. It helped, if only a little. Meanwhile, Todd wallowed in anger and shame at his home, a spacious two-story house in an affluent part of town. His father, Robert Whitfield, was away on business, and Todd's mother, Elizabeth, was absorbed in social events. Todd paced his room, replaying the hallway fight in his mind. The sting of being outmaneuvered by a girl, something he'd ridiculed others for, was unbearable. With each memory, his fury grew. He decided he needed a final showdown, something that would bring her to her knees. The next day was Saturday, and the school was closed. Denise spent her morning at Master Shu's dojo, immersing herself in rigorous training. The repetition of punches and kicks, the thud of striking pads, and the measured cadence of Master Shu's guidance filled her mind, pushing away thoughts of Todd. But she couldn't escape reality forever. That afternoon, as she left the dojo, she spotted Todd across the street. He leaned against a black SUV, arms crossed, glaring at her. How had he found out about the dojo? The possibility of him following her felt chilling. She didn't want to lead him back to her house, so she decided to approach him calmly right there in broad daylight. She crossed the street, keeping her head high. "You're following me now?" she asked in a steady voice. Todd smirked. "So this is where you learn your tricks," he said, gesturing at the dojo sign behind her. "That explains a lot. Didn't realize you were such a badass." Denise didn't bother correcting his assumption. She simply replied, "Why are you here?" He shrugged, feigning casualness. "Just checking out the competition. You know I can't have the whole school thinking you're stronger than me." She felt a stab of annoyance. "It's not about who's stronger. It's about you backing off." He stepped closer, and she could see anger simmering beneath the surface. "Tell you what he said in a low tone. Meet me Monday evening behind the old football field storage shed. No teachers, no interruptions. We settle this once and for all." A spark of alarm flashed through her. Was he serious? A prearranged fight off school grounds away from supervision? It sounded risky and not something she wanted to be part of. Fighting Todd one-on-one in a deserted spot carried the possibility of real harm, especially if he came with a group. She also considered the legal consequences. This was more than a teenage scuffle. It could escalate into something criminal. She shook her head. "This is childish. I'm not showing up for a street fight." He scoffed. "Scared?" "No," she replied, looking him dead in the eyes. "I just don't see the point in feeding your ego." Todd clenched his fists, then forced a grin. "Fine, you can run and hide. But the story will spread around school that you chickened out. And I'll keep coming after you until you grow a spine." Denise's heart hammered. Fear was not the issue. She didn't want to validate Todd's thirst for violence. But if she kept avoiding him, would his harassment escalate, dragging in more students or creating more public scenes? She thought about her mother, about Master Shu's words regarding self-control. This was a dilemma with no easy answer. Finally, Todd hopped into the SUV and slammed the door. Before pulling away, he rolled down the window. "Monday after school," he repeated. "Behind the storage shed. Bring whoever you want. Won't make a difference." With that, he sped off, leaving Denise standing there on the sidewalk, the wind stirring her hair. For a moment, she just stared after the vehicle, uncertainty churning in her gut. One thing was clear: Todd wouldn't let this go until he got what he wanted. Over the weekend, word somehow leaked that Todd was planning a confrontation with Denise. Rumors flew around, text messages, Snapchat stories, and whispered phone calls. By Monday morning, half the student body seemed to know about the impending showdown behind the old football field storage shed. Some were calling it the fight of the year, while others expressed concern that Todd was finally going too far. Denise didn't confirm or deny anything to the curious classmates who asked. She found the attention embarrassing and maddening. Yet deep inside, a part of her recognized that maybe, just maybe, letting Todd have his confrontation could end this once and for all. She weighed the risks carefully. An unsupervised fight was dangerous, but Todd cornered and humiliated might escalate to something even more reckless if denied his chance. If the entire school expected them to face off, and she didn't show Todd's torment, would likely become relentless. She sought counsel from Master Shu that afternoon. She explained the situation, skirting some details about the location and time, but enough for him to understand. Master Shu listened with concern, then said, "Violence outside of controlled training is rarely the answer. However, I understand that some conflicts corner you into defending yourself. If you do this, remember your training do not fight from anger, but from clarity. Defend yourself, and do what you must to stay safe." The sun was setting when Denise arrived behind the football field storage shed, wearing athletic shoes, jeans, and a simple t-shirt. She didn't bring an entourage. She did, however, text her friend Tasha, asking her to discreetly alert someone if things got out of hand. She wanted at least one person to know where she was. She found Todd already waiting, leaning against the shed with a smug look. Caleb and Wyatt stood nearby looking anxious. A small crowd of students, maybe 15 or 20, had gathered at a cautious distance. Some had their phones out, ready to record. The setting sun cast elongated shadows on the field, and the air was tinged with anticipation. Denise approached, meeting Todd's gaze steadily. "This is ridiculous," she said. "We're not in some movie." He shrugged, a cocky grin etched across his face. "I gave you a chance to back down." She sighed. "And you wouldn't have let it go, would you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward, rolling his shoulders, warming up for a fight. The watching students murmured among themselves, the tension thick enough to taste. One person whispered, "Is this really happening?" Another held up a phone, capturing every second. Todd moved first, lunging with surprising speed. Denise sidestepped, raising her arms in a defensive block. She was determined not to injure him unnecessarily. He swung again, more controlled this time than in the hallway. She parried the blow, feeling the sting in her forearms. He pressed on with a barrage of punches, each one more forceful than the last. Denise blocked and dodged, her adrenaline spiking. She could see the frustration building in Todd's eyes as he failed to land a meaningful hit. The small circle of onlookers watched with bated breath. Caleb and Wyatt hung back, perhaps mindful of their humiliating loss last time. They exchanged concerned glances, uncertain whether to jump in. Out of nowhere, Todd feinted a high punch and swept his leg low, attempting to knock Denise off her feet. She saw the move too late. His shin connected with her calf, forcing her to stumble. She fell to one knee, pain shooting up her leg. Todd grinned triumphant and came in for a follow-up strike. She caught his wrist just inches from her face, twisting it sharply. Todd cried out and tried to yank free, but she maintained her grip. In one fluid motion, she leveraged her weight, and flipped him onto his back. He landed hard. The watching crowd gasped. Denise released him, stepping back to give him space to recover. She didn't want to keep fighting unless absolutely necessary. But Todd, red-faced and gasping, rolled to his feet, ignoring the pain in his wrist. "You think you're better than me?" he yelled, eyes wild. She shook her head. "I'm just stopping you from hurting me." He swung wildly again, and she blocked, pinning his arm behind his back. This time the pain made him roar in anger. She tightened her hold enough to force him still. "Stop," she commanded, voice firm. "I don't want to hurt you. This is over." He struggled, sweat pouring down his face. The crowd murmured, some urging Todd to calm down, others excitedly urging them to keep going. "Let him go," someone shouted. Denise hesitated, worried that letting him go meant he'd launch another attack, but she also couldn't hold him forever. She glanced around, seeing a range of reactions. Some were in awe. Others shook their heads in disbelief, that Todd of all people was being manhandled in a fight. Slowly she loosened her grip, stepping away as Todd spun around. For a second, he looked like he might charge again. But a flicker of realization passed over his features. He couldn't beat her this way. Humiliation twisted his expression. Instead of launching another attack, he spat on the ground near her feet. "This isn't over," he growled, his voice echoing in the still evening air. With that, he shoved past the gathered students, ignoring the barrage of questions and stares. Caleb and Wyatt trailed after him, not meeting anyone's gaze. The crowd stayed silent for a long moment, before scattering. Some huddled in small groups, whispering about what they just witnessed. Denise stood there, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The sky above was streaked with orange and pink as the sun set. But she barely noticed its beauty. All she felt was exhaustion, physical, mental, emotional. She had defended herself, but Todd's parting words echoed in her ears. "This isn't over." The next day at school was surreal. Denise walked the halls to a chorus of hushed whispers and stolen glances. The video footage of the fight, shaky phone clips that captured the climactic moments had spread like wildfire online. Everyone knew Todd had lost, and not just lost, but been bested thoroughly. Todd was nowhere to be found that morning. Some said he'd called in sick. Others speculated he was so furious he couldn't face anyone. Denise wasn't sure whether she was relieved or anxious. She took her seat in first period English, wishing for normalcy. But normalcy was the last thing on Crescent Ridge High's mind. Students who rarely spoke to Denise before approached her with a mix of admiration and fear. "That was insane," one boy said. "Where'd you learn to fight like that?" a girl whispered, eyes wide. Denise mumbled non-committal answers, hoping the hype would fade. She didn't want to be labeled the girl who beat Todd. She just wanted to attend classes in peace. By lunchtime, Todd's absence fueled speculation that he was planning something big. His social media accounts were unusually quiet. Denise heard rumors that Todd might bring outsiders' friends from another school to jump her. Others claimed he might have a weapon. The swirl of theories made her stomach clench. After school, Denise considered skipping her usual route to the dojo, worried Todd might ambush her. But she quickly dismissed the idea. She refused to let him control her life. She walked quickly, alert to her surroundings, but no one followed her. At Master Shu's dojo, she finally relaxed a little, immersing herself in practice. That evening as she left, she found a note tucked under her windshield wiper. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw the handwriting was Todd's. "See me at the old abandoned building near Vine Street. Don't bother bringing any friends, or do if you think it'll help." The cryptic message was short but menacing. She stared at the note, anger bubbling up. This was absurd. He wanted yet another confrontation, presumably even more dangerous than the last. An abandoned building in a deserted area had too much potential for real harm. She texted Tasha again, letting her know about the note, though she wasn't sure if she'd even go. Master Shu's voice echoed in her mind. "If you do this, remember your training." But how could she not go, when Todd made it clear he would keep haunting her? Otherwise, every cell in her body wanted to just live her life. Yet if she backed down, Todd would spread it around that she was scared. Worse, he might escalate by targeting her at home or at the dojo. Denise sat in her car, phone in hand, warring with herself. Was there a better way out? Call the police, involve her mother. The school administration. None of those options seemed appealing. The police might dismiss it as a schoolyard dispute. The administration had already proven lenient with Todd, and her mother had enough stress. Finally, she decided that if Todd wanted another showdown, she would turn the tables. She would show up, but on her terms. This time, she would bring backup, not physically, but a safety net in case Todd did something truly reckless. She asked Tasha to wait nearby with a phone ready to call for help if needed. Before that, though, she placed a discreet call to Mr. Patel, the cafeteria supervisor who had once intervened. He was one of the few staff members she trusted. She didn't tell him everything, only that Todd was pressuring her for a dangerous after-school confrontation. Patel sounded concerned and promised to inform Principal Jefferson. Still, she had little faith they would reach Todd in time or do anything to restrain him. It was dusk when Denise arrived at the old abandoned building near Vine Street. The structure had once been a warehouse, now long condemned with broken windows and peeling paint. Shadows clung to the walls, and the air smelled of damp concrete. A single flickering streetlight cast eerie illumination across the deserted lot. She parked her car a safe distance away. Tasha waited in her own car around the corner, phone in hand. Denise texted her, "I'm here. Keep your eyes open. If things get bad, call for help immediately." Tasha replied with a thumbs-up emoji, her anxiety evident in the short response. Denise swallowed hard, stepping into the gloom. Her senses were on high alert, every rustle of debris making her heart pound. Then she saw Todd's silhouette standing near a rusted chain-link fence. He was alone, or so it appeared. She walked forward until they were about 10 feet apart. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paced fists, clenching at his sides. In the pale light, she could see the anger etched into his features. "You ruined my reputation," he finally said, voice trembling with rage. "Everyone thinks I'm some joke now." She sighed, exasperated. "I didn't ruin anything. You did this to yourself. Bullying people for years, trying to intimidate me. This is all on you." He let out a bitter laugh. "You have no idea what it's like, do you? Growing up in my family, with all the expectations. Do you think I wanted to be this way?" His words surprised her. This was the first time Todd had shown any hint of deeper motivation. She studied him, suddenly, noticing the weariness under the fury. "You could have chosen differently," she said gently. "It doesn't have to be like this." He shook his head, brushing away any hint of vulnerability. Too late now, he snapped. "We settle this tonight." Without warning, he charged at her. Denise barely had time to shift her stance. She sidestepped his rush, but he pivoted faster than before, elbowing her in the side. Pain exploded along her ribs, and she stumbled, gasping. Todd advanced, throwing punch after punch. Some were wild, but the force behind them was undeniable. He was fighting with raw fury, tapping into adrenaline and desperation. She blocked what she could, but he managed a glancing blow to her shoulder. She hissed in pain, realizing he'd improved since their last encounter. Perhaps he'd been practicing or fueling his rage to become more dangerous. Despite the ache, Denise summoned her training. She steadied her breath, focusing on technique rather than anger. With a quick shift, she trapped Todd's arm and delivered a short elbow strike to his chest. He staggered back, coughing. The look in his eyes was a mix of hatred and desperation. "It doesn't have to be this way," she said again, trying to reason with him. "Shut up!" he roared, charging again. She dodged, sweeping his legs, but he caught her mid-move, pulling her down. They both tumbled onto the rough concrete, grappling for control. Todd tried to pin her, but she wriggled free, landing a knee strike to his side. He grunted in pain. Sweat poured down their faces, the entire fight illuminated only by the weak orange glow from the streetlight. Suddenly, headlights pierced the darkness. A car pulled up, and out stepped Caleb and Wyatt. Denise's stomach twisted with fear that they were here to jump in. Instead, they hesitated by the car, uncertain. Todd, seeing reinforcements arrive, tried to rally. "Don't just stand there," he yelled. "Help me." Caleb and Wyatt exchanged looks. They knew Todd had gone too far, but loyalty tugged at them. Slowly, Wyatt took a step forward. Denise braced herself for a 2-on-1 scenario, but a shout rang out from behind them, making everyone freeze. "Stop right there!" Mr. Patel's voice echoed in the night, followed by the glare of another set of headlights. A second car pulled in. Principal Jefferson stepped out along with 2 other staff members. Tasha appeared from around a corner, relief all over her face. Denise exhaled shakily. Reinforcements had arrived just in time. Todd, breathing hard, glared at Mr. Patel and the principal. "What are you doing here?" he snarled. Principal Jefferson's face was grim. "Ending this before someone gets seriously hurt." He motioned to Todd. "You need to come with us. Now." Caleb and Wyatt stepped back, clearly relieved they wouldn't have to fight. Todd looked ready to argue, but the presence of staff members and the knowledge that he was outnumbered seemed to deflate him. He stared at Denise with pure hatred, then spat at the ground. "You just got lucky," he said, voice trembling. Before turning to follow the principal, he added, "This isn't over." But there was no venom behind his words anymore, only a hollow threat. As staff members led Todd away, Mr. Patel approached Denise, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her ribs throbbed and her shoulder ached. "I'm fine. Thank you for coming." He sighed. "I should have stepped in sooner, but I wasn't sure where exactly you two would meet. Tasha let me know." Denise glanced at Tasha, who offered a small, supportive smile. She smiled back, grateful to have a friend who had her back. The staff members insisted on driving Denise home, ensuring her safety for the night. They also confiscated Todd's phone, planning to involve his parents. Principal Jefferson said he would have to face serious consequences for this. Denise didn't protest. She was too exhausted physically and emotionally. She climbed into Mr. Patel's car, glancing one last time at the abandoned building. Todd's shape was barely visible in the darkness as he got into the principal's vehicle. The final reckoning had come and gone, and though Denise had stood her ground, she felt a heavy weariness in her bones. Over the next week, the aftermath of the abandoned building confrontation rippled through Crescent Ridge High. Todd faced an immediate suspension, followed by a hearing that involved the superintendent. The evidence video footage from the prior fights, eyewitness accounts, and the staff intervention was too overwhelming. Rumor had it, Todd's father tried to exert his influence to lessen the punishment, but the district had reached its limit with Todd's repeated incidents. The possibility of expulsion loomed. For Denise, the days were a blur of questions, mild hero worship from some peers, and a lot of silent introspection. She replayed the fights in her mind, wondering if there was a path she could have taken that avoided violence altogether. Though she'd never started any of it, she had certainly ended it forcefully. Master Shu told her to forgive herself. Self-defense, he reminded her, is not an act of aggression. One morning, Principal Jefferson summoned her to his office. She arrived heart-pounding, unsure of what to expect. The principal gestured for her to sit. "Denise, I want to say that I'm sorry we didn't act sooner. We were aware of Todd's issues, but we never imagined he would escalate this far." Denise nodded. "I appreciate that, sir. He cleared his throat. "Todd has been recommended for expulsion. His parents are contesting it, but I doubt they'll succeed. You won't have to worry about him at this school anymore." She exhaled relief mingled with an odd sadness. "I'm not happy about what happened," she said. "I just wanted him to leave me alone." Principal Jefferson nodded. "I understand. I also want you to know that we're here for you if you need any counseling or support after what you've gone through." She thanked him and left the office feeling lighter. Todd's reign had finally ended. While some part of her worried about the future, what if Todd held a grudge beyond high school? She reminded herself that she couldn't live in constant fear. She had stood up for herself, and her life would continue. As the weeks passed, the buzz around Todd's downfall faded. He never returned to Crescent Ridge High. Rumors emerged that he might attend a military boarding school somewhere upstate, a last-ditch effort by his parents to straighten him out. Denise hoped for his sake that he found a way to deal with his issues without hurting others. In the meantime, she focused on her studies, her friendships, and her martial arts. She spent more time at Master Shu's dojo, perfecting her form and even helping instruct younger kids. She found solace in the idea that her skills could be used not just to defend herself, but to empower others to be confident and safe. One sunny afternoon, as Denise walked across the school field, Tasha jogged up to her. Heard the news, she asked, excitement in her voice. Denise raised an eyebrow. "What news?" "They finalized Todd's expulsion. He's officially gone." Denise took a deep breath, gazing at the now peaceful campus. Students lounged on the grass or hurried to class, unburdened by the tension that once loomed. "It's about time," she said. Tasha nudged her playfully. "You know you're kind of a legend around here now. The girl who took down Todd Whitfield?" She rolled her eyes with a small smile. "Great. That's exactly what I wanted as my legacy." They both laughed. Then they caught sight of Mr. Patel, who was chaperoning a group of students. He gave Denise a nod of approval, and she nodded back, gratitude shining in her eyes. In that moment, Denise realized her story wasn't one of petty high school fights. It was about standing up against bullies, learning to wield strength responsibly, and discovering her own worth. She had faced conflict head-on, but she never lost sight of who she was. A resilient, compassionate person, refusing to be crushed by hatred or intimidation, and that she decided was a story worth telling. High school can be a battleground, but this story proves that courage, self-respect, and a clear moral compass can shatter any illusion of fear. Denise Morgan's journey from quiet newcomer to self-assured fighter reminds us that sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves, no matter the cost. Through her unwavering resolve, she not only confronted the bully, but also exposed the roots of pain and anger fueling his actions. It took compassion, discipline, and a willingness to fight back when pushed too far, all qualities we can admire and strive to cultivate in our own lives. If her story resonates with you, please consider lending your support. Hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel so we can continue bringing you powerful, uplifting tales. Let's spread respect and resilience one story at a time.